Welcome everyone. Today we have Daniel joining us. How are you, Daniel?
I'm good, thanks.
Daniel is an incredible whistleblower. I've interviewed him previously and just wanted to do an update on his story. He literally come across what we could just only describe as MK Ultra experiments happening in the Brisbane community and was drawn into those through a house that he was living in and experienced firsthand that there are people that are ex-military, intelligence, police officers, the whole lot involved in, these operations that are occurring in our communities that are mind controlled. They're testing different technology, as well as that they're trafficking drugs and connected to the networks that are trafficking our children. And since Daniel tried to report this, he's actually experienced horrific attacks on his person, his friends and family, and literally they've tried to paint him as doing all the things that they're actually up to. So I wanted to do an update of Daniel's story because I think it's such an important one, because we often look back at MK Ultra cases and generational families, and it's all in the past. And it's really important to remember that this technology is actually being used out in our communities today. When this was occurring for Daniel, it was in the Logan area in Brisbane, and I've had several people report on very, very similar operations happening. So it seems to be a real hotspot. And there's literally some of these in states all around the country. So I'm so grateful for Daniel speaking to us today. It's really difficult for him because of the level of targeting that he's under. He doesn't get to sleep well and constantly has harassment. But it's so important that this story is going out, because it's not just Daniel that's being affected. There are so many, some that are knowingly being affected, and then there's a lot of people that are unfortunately caught up in these operations and haven't really understood yet. So I'm hoping by sharing some of what Daniel's seen and some of what Daniel's experienced, we can all have our eyes open and really start seeing what's happening in our communities, because that at this stage, that's the best way that we can push back, is make it harder for these operations to happen. So I know, Daniel, you literally come across this horrific operation through a house that you were living in. Would you be able to explain to the viewers, I guess, how this started for you, how you uncovered it, and what was the extent of the mind control operations that you saw?
First off, I'd just like to start off by saying sorry if I'm not very articulate. I'm tired, like you said, and I'm very worn down. And I'm not in the room with the best lighting. But yeah, it was a compounding thing. I myself, honestly, had problems at the time, and it led to me needing to move away from my mum, and back into Logan, into a shared complex. So that's why I moved in there. After a period of time, I met a guy. Just seemed like random guys, I've said before. And over a period of time, I noticed some weird stuff happening within the house that I was sharing, like a government shared housing. And just out of curiosity and things being weird at the time, there was no problem for me, and there was nothing happening to me. I just took it upon myself to stick my nose in where it didn't belong, and put some cameras and stuff up around the house, like little spy cameras, just like USB motion sensor cameras, and just like sort of left them on the bench, just chucked them around the house, in the garage, so on and so forth. And I managed to catch them, catch the guy that had just moved in a couple of months ago, with a few other people, messing with another tenant in the place that I lived. By messing with, I mean like they were hitting him. They I found out later they were drugging him, but I could see them doing other things to him. Like, what are they doing to this guy? Um, like letting him in and out of his room, um, walking him around the house, just doing lots of weird things. So off seeing that, still not really, knowing what's going on, I've tried to talk to the guy that's been assaulted first. I mean, he has no memory of it at all. I'm like, "Are you okay?" So I'm extra spinning out now. I'm really, yeah. And then my next thought was, well, I'll just ask this guy. And I asked this guy, and it sort of popped up a few times. It just sort of he denied it to begin with, and then it just escalated really quickly. And by the end of it, I just was around. I'd seen all the stuff. There was police involved. There was actual some bikers involved. I'm not going to say who. And mental health people, all sorts of stuff that popped up in a very small period of time. I met people that were working in Madison Nauru. I met people that were working, mental health people that worked in jails, counsellors that worked in jails. I met what were ASIO, but some ASIO, but they were pretending to be federal police. But they slipped a couple of times on and off. You know, bikers, military people, in just a really small period of time. It was just, yeah. And by the time I wrapped my head around it, and because it just, there were drugs involved at the time, to be honest. So they were selling drugs and stuff. I was still dealing with using it myself, so I was having little bits. So everything compacted together. It was just like time disappeared in like a really quick time, and then I was sort of just left going, wow, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe how full on this is. I need to do something about it. I was also dealing with my own stuff with family issues and stuff as well. And then, like, by the time I complained, they figured it out. They just somehow knew. They're like, oh, we've got. They were going off for a little bit. Some of the hood rat ones. We've got a leak. We've got a leak. We've got a rat. We've got whatever. And then all of a sudden, they turned real funny towards me, like just really cold and not talking very much, not replying very much, not giving too much away. And I knew right then, I was like, oh, bugger. And that was after I think wrote a letter and sent it overseas, thinking that, you know, maybe these people can help, since Australia at this point seems pretty touch and go and pretty dangerous to pop your head up, if that makes sense. Yeah, so, and that's what I assume upset them and led to that reaction towards me initially. And then there was other things compounding on top of it. And then it just, I pretty much, I think about it every day. I'm worse for where I'm experiencing things. I'm pretty bad at the moment, but I had to sit there and watch everyone just go crazy around me. You got people that you've known your whole life, you know their character, their core values, who they are as a person, their mannerisms. You know, you spend a lot of time with these people that are close to you. And it was, honestly, for lack of a better word, pretty quickly, like they were just different people. They were all those intelligent, kind, you know, mannerisms and stuff, and you know, like boundaries, and just, you know, all of, here's a normal person. You're not going to see a normal person, you know, raping, beating, drugging, and whatever, a human being or even an animal, you know, like anyone really. You know, that is two very big separate ends of the ladder, drastic change. Yeah. So, and that's pretty much been my life since. I can only assume with stuff to do with my family, and I can literally only assume because I don't know. I've seen them do similar things to other family. That guy, Todd Dolman, had a family. They were doing it to his family. They were bragging about doing it to other families. They were talking about targeting certain criminal groups and also certain social demographics, social groups, to try and use this technology and spread it as far as possible. It's an ongoing field testing area. They just pretty much, this was a testing ground. Yeah, and as I said before, please forgive me. I'm just so tired and over all this stuff. I can answer any and all questions, but me myself, I'm just really worn down. Yeah.
Of course, there's so much to live through. So just to backtrack and just kind of take all of that in. So you literally were staying in a house. You had another housemate that you were seeing being assaulted, drugged, raped, tortured, and
I
then
caught them doing it on the sly.
What was that, Daniel?
Yeah. I caught them doing it on the sly. Yeah, that wasn't done blatantly in the open. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you've tried to report this to the authorities, like the police, to politicians, to make reports about this within Australia, it's literally all been shut down because these groups are part of that particular network.
Yeah, well, they seem to be scrambling. I've tried to say to people, this isn't about you. They're doing this for their own interests. They're not covering your ass. They're covering their ass. They wouldn't go to so much length to help you do whatever you think you are doing to help you. They're doing it to cover their own ass. They're hiding things, and they're using these people, spurring them on in different ways. Same techniques, messing with head, same thing, money, drugs, so on. And it's like they're just using these people to do these horrid things and egging them on. And I keep trying to remind them and saying, why these people are okay with this, all this perverted, twisted stuff that you are doing, because they are the same. These are the types of people that control our country, and they're caught completely, entirely, over and over again, the most heinous things imaginable, right down to kids. And they're okay with this sort of stuff because these are the perverts that run our country, the bad ones anyway.
Yeah, it starts from the top, doesn't it? And so the people that were on housing, they were, the low-level thugs that these networks are using. So they're often recruited through, detention centers, through prison, they're ex-military, and they're being drawn into these programs where they're literally hands-on, using the techniques of mind control, particularly now using frequency and technology in that, because a lot of the old, more clandestine methods of having to torture people physically are not needed. They're all working together to continue these operations and this testing in our communities. And I think the important thing to recognize is our governments have bought this technology, and they need to know the stats, they need the research, they need the experiments to actually learn how to map the human mind to use these energy frequency weapons on humanity. And this testing, before has happened all through, the Iraq, the Afghanistan wars, and now it's actually being used on home populations, and we're allegedly, anyway, not in a wartime situation. So it's incredibly shocking to hear this is happening in Logan, in Brisbane.
Yeah, I've since moved from there. I now live at Redbank, or say, in Ipswich, and it's still the same. They follow everywhere. When you hear people talk about stalking, like gang stalking, people don't understand the level of actual stalking that comes into it. It's like wherever you move, they will literally go to the house next door, knock on the door, say hey, and then just start going on about you. And if you let them in, that's you pretty much, what's the saying? The devil may knock, but don't friggin' let them in. And they got no idea what they're dealing with, and they've blindly just walked into a scenario they honestly have no clue. And most people don't. Before it's too late, you can just and you can see the blocks, like you can see the inability to understand the seriousness and the even if it's just a could be impact that could have on your family, and what that could mean. And they're so blasé. People are so blasé about it. It's like, yeah, fra la la la. Here's this stuff they've used to kill millions of people, tested it on millions of people, to even come to this point, to even be able to have what we have now. This is a technology made on the blood, pain, and suffering of men, women, and children. But don't worry, it's here to help you. Don't learn from history. It's not going to be a repeating cycle. Yeah.
And just for people to understand, Daniel and many other targeted individuals, because there are thousands in every country around the world, has experienced attacks on his character. So being, labeled things, being harassed on social media, being harassed in person, drugged, damage to property. They access him within his home, despite him having moved, druggings, being abused in his house, being raped, being tortured. And it's just horrific. And because the people around you are being memory blocked, etc., drugged themselves, there's not that recognition of what's really happening. It's like everyone's in a bit of a trance. So it's really, really scary that these operations are able to go on in our communities. And I think the reason why that is people have such little understanding of, you know, where this technology is at and how it has, like Daniel was saying, already been tested on thousands, if not millions of people out in our communities, and it's happening today. So I'd love you to explain, Daniel, a little bit about what you've seen physically with the technology, because I think that's really shocking as well. They were actually dialed into apps using smartphones, you know, to record things, because it really is experiment based. So I'd love you to share about that as well.
Um, from a standpoint, the technology does allow, you can Google, it's called remote neural monitoring. Edward Snowden talked about it a very long time ago. But it essentially allows you to see everything a person sees, hears, and thinks, so private thoughts. And it can be accessed through any device that can hook up to the internet. So that can be a laptop, iPad, you know, phone, any device that you can get hooked up to the internet. You can essentially have that software installed on your device, and it can be used. And what they do is they record everything. So it's like everything that happens in the person's life, you know, that's stressful, especially more so is what they aim for, hence trauma based, because they do a lot of testing with, you know, mind control and reading neural pathways and stuff like that. Everyone's interested. That's the point we're at with our medical science, and we're trying to push that further at this point, or have been for a while. The mapping the neural pathways of the human brain. Ethically, we can take someone, you could take somewhere, a scientist somewhere, and put the stuff on, show them puppy dogs and kittens, and oh, that makes me happy, and they can read, you know, those responses, the responses that they can't get, which is the mapping the pathways of the brain, is pain, stress, heartache, you know, stuff like that, bad emotions. That's not something that they can ethically do. So what they do is they do have teams of people that just basically live in hell. And I mean, it's just an onslaught. It's like professional trolling, except on steroids. And they'll stalk you, they'll stuff your stuff up, they'll hurt you, they'll do stuff to you, they'll attack your environment, try to cause more stress that way while attacking your environment. By that, I mean close family, friends, you know, whatever network of support you've got to try and cut you off. They've also got their own ways where they will use family members and so on and so forth that they've tried to cut you off from, because it's an ongoing test, and the more people, the better. And no one ever, not a lot of people see it, but it's both sides coppered, regardless. So it's a trauma-based thing. They'll beat you, they'll hurt you. I've, like you said, it's really emasculating, but I've been sexually abused constantly. I've tried to complain about it. I've gone to hospitals. I've gone to stuff. They are very in depth, well versed at things that most people wouldn't even believe is going on, hiding medical reports like injuries and stuff like that. I actually had to go on a private investigator website, and they have infidelity tests that a husband can buy for the wife, or vice versa. And I had to get one of them and a test for semen. And so I had to actually order one of them offline. I did test, proved it. Now, at the same time, I'm being funneled into certain mental health professionals that are aware of what's going on, and they're covering as well. So now it's going into the psychiatric side of it. And I had a lady out the other day, and I told her, and you could just tell straight away, because she just dismissed it. It's like, lady, you know, I did this test. It came back positive. It's not me thinking it's happening. I have intelligently approached this the best I can with who I am to, at this point, to say, you know, this is happening. It's not me thinking it's happening. I'm constantly gaslit. Then things are hid. I'm losing time a lot as well. Like, I'm losing big gaps of time where I have no memory of what I've done, which I've been complaining about consistently. Everyone's just brushing it off. Apparently, from what I've been told from being attacked in the community, and they've even spread this through gyms. Like, I was at a martial art gym, they were spreading it through gym. There's kids in this gym, and the horrific stuff that they were talking about with these kids, like, you want to be whatever you think you are as adults. Like, I had to leave because of the impact. Me being present, I felt like me being present was allowing these people to go, well, we want to access these people now because he's in that environment, and that's what's affecting them negatively. Whereas if I remove myself, that's not going to happen. But yeah, horrific murder stuff. Apparently, I was. I'm an adult. I'm an adult. Like, I've done bits and pieces with Jim, but I've always been an adult. But apparently, I was renting several properties. I was secretly had a lot of money. I was dealing drugs. I was also trafficking kids. I was making like sick videos apparently. And when they say this stuff, they're saying it in a time frame that like the darknet didn't even exist, and like cameras, like you go over it technology wise and everything, and it's like smartphones weren't there. It's like all this stuff that they're saying, their time frame's really off. I've been going through this for 7 years, 7 years and 4 months. Prior to that, I was with a girl for a year, which is now involved with this. There's 8 years, 8 years and 4 months. Just off that 8 years and 4 months alone of going through this and having that, their time frames don't match up in the period of time that they're saying. It's not possible. None of it's possible. And I'm purposely avoiding mentioning the type of murder stuff there is and the stuff they've gone on about, because I can't hear it anymore. I can't. It's too much for me. And it literally nearly led for me not being here on Christmas time. So, which is, yeah, which led to those police and that interaction I spoke to you about earlier. I'm copping it from all angles. I've got my loved ones, the people I love the most, not the same anymore, and I'm being set up in ways that I have a rough idea, but not fully. And no one, they're trying to remove any blame or responsibility for anything that they have done or that's gone on. There's videos of me getting around and like cross-dressing stuff that I've reported to the police. There's videos of me, like a stupid video, like mimes where they think they make out there's an invisible wall, like trapped in a box, can't get out the box. And I complained about that to the police, and that I was told that I was chasing clout, that I wanted attention, that I wanted clout. And it's like, no, this is what they're doing to me. I don't remember that being done to me. I don't remember that. I want this video taken down. I can't get access to this account. I'm not the one that's done this account. Can you please take it down? Oh, you just want clout, mate. We know people like you. It's like, excuse me? I can't even complain about these things. I can't even say, I put cameras in my home. Things happen, the cameras freeze and stop. These are like expensive cameras. I can't even get it on camera in my own home with putting cameras up. Like, there's just so much blatant stuff happening that I am not in control of, and I'm just along for the ride. I can't do anything except say I'm not like what they're making me out to be. I'm not this person. Anything that's going on, I can't control, no matter how hard I've tried. Yeah.
So essentially, they're really trying to frame you for the exact activities that they are doing. So drug trafficking, human trafficking, causing trouble in the communities, being a criminal. So they're turning everything around and placing it on you. And I know, Daniel, you've actually done testing to find out what sort of drugs you are under the influence of. And these videos and things that are being put up are you when you're literally not
Aware.
your drugs.
Yeah.
Instead of them being used as evidence by these authorities like the police, they're just being thrown out. So do you know what drugs you were come back positive for in your testing that you've ran yourself?
It's chopped and changed over the years, but the one that I tested for personally, because I can't get tests done through doctors. Because anything that's computer based, they can get access to and change. But what I've tested for, which was over the counter drug test from the pharmacy, came back positive for barbiturates and amphetamines.
Wow.
So, and there is no tests for LSD, or there's not many tests for all the new drugs that these people are using these days. It's only the old basic ones.
they're designer drugs that are being used in these mind control programs out in the community. So they're almost untestable because they're not looking for those as well.
Nope. And that's the other thing, test new drugs on the person. You don't, very hard to catch them testing drugs on a person that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't even know about yet. So,
Or the population, the people.
yeah.
And this group are incredibly well connected. Like, I know you, during your experience in harassment after reporting them, you actually saw they had connections to military contractors, obviously the police, ex-military were being used. And it was Dyncorp, is that correct, that was actually involved with drug trafficking? Would you be able to speak a bit on that?
It was just a fleeting conversation. I walked into a room and someone was saying something about a military contractor, and I just asked them, and oh yeah, Dyncorp helps us out. We're shipping some stuff, and it was just a fleeting spat out comment. I don't really know much more past that. I couldn't tell you much more past that. But what they were talking about, everything coincided with what they were saying. There was never something. The worst thing that really did my head in is there was never something that they said that they weren't going to do or wasn't going to happen or whatever, that there wasn't other stuff confirming, reinforcing this as it was happening. So when they said about Dyncorp, it was just the same thing again. It was just like, oh, they're just talking about something again. Next week, boom, Dyncorp contracts in Australia. And it was like literally in the news. And it was like they were just talking about it. And it was just like, bam. And it was like, holy shit. And then I was like, well, who are these people? So same as always, me being me, the first thing I go is, what's going on here? Who are these people? Look it up. And they've had all these charges for human trafficking, drug trafficking, involved with Russian mafia, being involved in hits and assassinations or accused of murders, wartime murders, all sorts of stuff. This is not a good company. This is a blatantly obvious. And so it was just, yet again, it was more confirmation of what these people had just said to me at the same period of time. Yeah, it was just really weird how everything they said just, bam, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. They even talked about using Bitcoin, them having digital currency, all this digital currency that they didn't know what to do with, or that it was impractical and they couldn't use it because of how much they had. And they talked about, bringing Bitcoin into a more perspective thing and making it more of a socially acceptable form of currency. And then blew up on the news that, oh, now Bitcoin can be now used to buy houses and all this stuff. Whereas before you couldn't use it for that, even though you had it and even though the money was there, the bulk of it you couldn't use like that. So they'd said that, and that happened. And this isn't new stuff to me. I wrote all of this down in a thing, and I literally sat here and watched every key point that I wrote down happen, and periodically over a time frame, to the point where I was just like, spun out to the point where why won't anyone listen to me? I'm not a fortune teller. I've written all this stuff down in a detailed letter, and I've had to sit here and watch all this stuff happen, key point after key point. No one listened. It was just ignore him. And now I'm pretty much useless now. I feel like so bad, worse for wear. I'm so drugged daily. I've got track marks on my neck that I constantly wake up, some bleeding holes in my neck. I can't even complain about that. That's normal apparently. Nothing, no help, no avenue, nothing. And every time I get something started with a good police officer or a set of police officers, these pricks swoop in and say, no, we've got this handled, it's ongoing in other ways, we'll handle it. So, and they're the same people who've caused the problem from the start, so it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, and I'm waiting to be set up from what I've been told to be one of the vilest. Everything we have read about online about that stuff that goes on, I am being set up for that. I am that person now. And it's horrible. It's like a sci-fi horror movie that I can't get out of. That, yeah.
It just, what you've lived through in the last 7 years in terms of just trying to report these illegal activities that are happening, this damage that's happening to individuals in the community, and the way it's being thrown out constantly, it just shows the scope of these networks. We've got military contractors involved, the AFP, intelligence, ex-military, you know, all targeting individuals, like families, like in our communities in Queensland and around Australia. It's just absolutely horrific, you know. And I just send you so much strength and love, Daniel, for you having the integrity to stand up. And that's the thing, these whistleblowers are standing up because it's the right thing to do. He saw someone in his house being drugged and abused, being tortured. He come across apps being used, you know, by the military to basically, you know, get these experiments done in our communities. And he's not being supported in actually reporting this, and is actually being targeted. It's like it's all being turned around on you now. And it's so very sad, the state of affairs in Australia, what whistleblowers have to live through for doing the right thing. So, you know, I just wanted to say thank you to you, Daniel, for everything you've done, for the sacrifice you've made, for doing what's right. And one thing before we finish up, I know, and this just highlights the scope of, you know, how big these guys are as well, like included in their drug trafficking, you actually heard them mention that they were trafficking adrenochrome as well, right?
Yeah, that's supposedly something else I'm being set up for now. Apparently, yes, they were, and a people farm was mentioned. So now that's the one last thing to touch on. To try and get it all out, I apologize again in advance for my not being very clear and concise. I really am worse for wear, but I'm being set up for being a human trafficker, people farmer who was making and selling adrenochrome and making abuse material. I was also a hitman. I'm also apparently a pedophile. I'm also apparently a drug dealer. And then the list just spurs off into all other stuff. They've made sick videos like the mime video. I'm stuck in a box. I can't get out. That whole hypnosis control, like stage hypnosis control thing, put on a show. They've done like racist videos of me saying I'm racist and stuff like that, and they film this stuff and they share it online. I have no control over it. I can't get the videos taken down. I mean, Bruce Lee's my hero. Like, I grew up loving this guy. You know, I'm probably one of the least racist people you would meet. But you know, I can't control. They can make me do anything in a controlled state and just film it and share it online. And there's nothing I can do. The cops won't listen. There's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, that's what I'm being set up for. They apparently plan. They've gone abused me, saying they plan to have me knocked off in remand and not let me get to court, so they won't even get to court. Yeah, petitioning online to try and have the death sentence brought back in, all sorts of just really evil stuff, as if it's not bad enough to get blood on people's hands. It's like you want innocent blood on everyone's hands. It's like you want everyone to say, yes, let's kill this guy based on. It's been pretty intense. And I just wish, unlike people that are trying to hide it from me and hide all this crap from me, I wish I could just put people in contact with each other. I want people to be in contact with each other, knowing full well other stuff that's been going on. I don't want it hidden. I want more than anything the truth now. And the last of this, I crave it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Daniel's kept meticulous records of what's happened, what dates, etc. So, you know, it would be great if you could actually present all of this in court. It's just you're not being given that option because these networks are in control of these systems of reporting as well. So, you know, all we can do is speak the truth, get your story out there, Daniel, you know, have the public aware of what you're living through, and so many other Australians are living through, you know, being targeted by these networks in our communities. And it happens so often to survivors that they become a targeted individual after they make their initial police report. You know, and these systems are completely corrupt. They're not serving the people at all. They're serving the network. So we need to wake up to that, and, you know, please share Daniel's story so it makes it to other people that need it. Other people are aware of what's happening in our communities, and we can offer Daniel at least the protection that we know what's been happening, so we can be your defense as such. And is there anything that you would like to put out there as a public request of what people can do to assist you at this time, Daniel?
It's like I said last time, just always report it in a way that you keep yourself safe, because one random person reporting is quite dangerous for you and your loved ones, unless you do it anonymously like Crime Stoppers or something. But this area that I live in Queensland has really become a testing ground. So I just would love to warn people and say, don't be naive. Don't think it can't happen to you. Don't think it can't happen to your loved ones. I know they got a lot of money. I know they got a lot of drugs if you're that way inclined. I know there's a lot of pretty girls and the girls just throw themselves around. I know all the stuff of that lifestyle. Be careful of these people. Think of your family first and avoid them if you believe that is best at all costs.
Yeah, we've got to be aware of exactly what's happening out there. And I know in that Brisbane community, some of the other reports that I've received are people basically being lured into these operations through social media apps, in particular through dating apps. So please be aware, if you are out there looking for love on these apps, intelligence is looking for you. So you need to really screen and have a look into people and keep yourself safe. So thank you so much for your time, Daniel, and thank you for having the integrity to do what's right, to stand strong. And I take my hat off to you, like enduring this for 7 years and being as coherent, and you never give up. You're always continuing to fight for your family, fight for the truth, and you're an inspiration in that way. So we really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm sorry that the world hasn't been ready to hear your story yet, but we can all share it and offer you the protection that we can give you in terms of getting the truth out as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. The dating app thing's another thing that they do, like we've talked about. Yeah.
And you saw that firsthand as well.
Yeah, they literally, like, you look up beta programming on the internet, it's something that they've been caught doing already. It's like sex trafficking program. Kathy O'Brien's talked about it. Fiona Barnett's talked about it. They literally just do it out of a person's home. They just set up a dating app. You go on there, think you're talking to that person, you're not. They arrange a time to meet somewhere. You meet. Person's not in control of themselves and just been told to do whatever they're told to do. Basically, successfully traffic a person without them even knowing. Person, as far as person is aware, they've been asleep the night or whatever time of the day, and just to them, it's a blink of an eye, and they're none the wiser. They can literally have people coming and going through the person's home, and they wouldn't even know it. And yes, that was something that I did witness and see firsthand.
Yeah. That's the thing.
So,
Like
pretty
that's
horrible, pretty scary.
yeah. The face of trafficking today has really changed, because it can be so much done through these apps and through electronics, through frequency. So you can be being trafficked from your home. You can have losses of time because you're being put on drugs, and frequencies are being used to program you as well. So it's scary, but it's something we all need to be aware of so we can protect each other, and most of all, just have our eyes open in our communities for all people, but younger people especially, because it's absolutely just it's horrific that they're able to get a hold of people and drag them into these operations. I hope you get your justice, Daniel, and we're all standing with you. Thank you for speaking out.
Thanks, Gab.